Sometimes life can change in an instant. An unexpected encounter, a casual conversation, a simple glance. Any of these can be enough to completely transform someone's destiny. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson never imagined that on an ordinary afternoon, during a routine stop to refuel his car, he would meet a man carrying a story forgotten by time. A mechanic, with calloused hands and a weary gaze, hiding a talent that the world had ignored. But why? What had happened to this man? What could have led a genius in engineering to end up at a gas station, changing oil and cleaning windshields? And more importantly, what would The Rock do upon discovering the truth? This is a story about the power of second chances, about justice and redemption, about how a small act of kindness can change everything forever. Stay until the end to follow this emotional journey that will touch your heart. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications so you won't miss more amazing stories like this, and leave a comment sharing your thoughts on this journey. Oh, and if this story moves you, don't forget to leave a like. It helps us keep bringing content like this. Now sit back and immerse yourself in this story full of surprises and twists. The sun was already low on the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and gold as Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson drove his 1971 Chevrolet Chevelle SS down a deserted road. The warm late afternoon air flowed in through the open window, carrying the scent of sun-heated asphalt and the feeling of freedom he cherished so much. The engine roared, each gear shift echoing like thunder, resonating through the vast emptiness of that forgotten highway. For The Rock, this wasn't just another drive. It was a rare moment of peace, far from Hollywood commitments, studios, interviews, and spotlights. Just him and his machine, driving for miles with no specific destination. He enjoyed this brief solitude, the sense of control he had when gripping the wheel of a classic car he knew so well. The 1971 Chevelle SS wasn't just any car. It was a piece of his history, a symbol of his journey from tough times to stardom. He had personally restored it with his own hands, carefully choosing every detail, assembling each part with dedication. To him, that engine wasn't just a machine. It was a beating heart, a constant reminder of where he came from and everything he had achieved. The roar of the engine filled the quiet road, its deep, powerful sound blending with the warm wind sweeping across the plains. But then, something changed. A strange noise interrupted the engine's harmony. A dry sound, almost like a mechanical hiccup. The Rock frowned. He knew this car well and could tell something was off. Gripping the steering wheel, he listened carefully, trying to pinpoint the problem. But before he could react, the noise intensified. A loud snap, followed by an unsettling vibration in the chassis. This wasn't good. He kept his composure, shifting down to avoid putting too much strain on the mechanics. But the power kept dropping. There was no choice. He had to pull over before the car stopped in the middle of the road. With a smooth turn of the wheel, he guided the Chevelle SS onto the shoulder and shut off the engine. The sudden silence was unsettling. Unbuckling his seatbelt, he stepped out of the car, feeling the lingering heat radiating from the engine. Night was beginning to fall, and the once golden sky was now deepening into shades of blue. Lifting the hood, a wave of heat rose, carrying the strong smell of burnt oil. He scanned the engine with an experienced eye, running his fingers over its components, searching for anything visible that might indicate the problem. But there was no smoke, no apparent leaks. He sighed. This wasn't going to be an easy fix on his own. Raising his gaze, he took in the surroundings. The road was deserted, with no signs of other vehicles. The wind gently rustled the dry bushes lining the path, and the only sound he could hear was the distant chirping of crickets hidden in the sparse vegetation. Then something caught his attention. In the distance, a faint light flickered against the darkening sky. Narrowing his eyes, he focused, trying to make out the details. After a few seconds, he could read the faded letters on an old, time-worn neon sign. Carter's Auto Repair, Mechanical Services and Fuel Station. The sight of a gas station in this desolate landscape was an unexpected relief. But at the same time, something inside him told him this wasn't just any station. He tapped the hood of the car lightly, shutting it with a firm motion. With no other option, he began pushing the Chevelle toward the station. With each step, he felt there was something different about this place. Maybe it was just instinct, or maybe it was the sense that behind that simple facade, a story was waiting to be uncovered. The gas station looked like something out of a forgotten era. Small, modest, with its simple structure worn down by time. The blue paint peeled away in several spots on the facade, revealing the old wood beneath. The windows were dusty, and the oil-stained ground told silent stories of the hundreds of cars that had passed through there over the years. A flickering neon sign hung above the entrance to the small convenience store attached to the station. The glass display reflected the orange glow of the setting sun, and an old radio placed on the tool counter played a nostalgic country melody, its soft chords blending with the occasional sound of the wind rattling the station's rusted signs. That was when the Rock noticed the man lying under a car, with only his legs visible to anyone looking from the outside. The mechanic worked in silence, moving with a precision that spoke of years, perhaps decades, of experience. His calloused hands, emerging from beneath the vehicle, firmly gripped a wrench, turning bolts with skill and confidence. He didn't seem like just an ordinary worker. There was something different about him. The Rock observed for a moment, noting every detail: the worn-out jumpsuit stained with grease, the meticulously arranged tools on a makeshift workbench beside the car, the way the man moved his fingers over the parts, feeling each gear as if deciphering a secret code. It wasn't rushed or impatient work. It was the precision of someone who truly understood what he was doing. As the Rock finally stepped closer, the shadow of his large frame stretched across the workshop floor. The mechanic seemed to sense his presence but didn't stop what he was doing right away. He simply adjusted a part with one last firm turn of the wrench before sliding out from under the car. Standing up, he wiped the sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand and looked at the Rock. His face was marked by time, the wrinkles around his eyes carrying a story the Rock didn't yet know. His eyes, however, remained neutral. No surprise, no excitement, no immediate recognition of the famous man standing in front of him. It was as if the Rock were just another customer. For a brief moment, silence settled between them. The sound of the country radio filled the space between them. Then, finally, the Rock explained that his car had broken down a few meters away and asked if the mechanic could take a look. The man didn't ask unnecessary questions or show excessive curiosity. He simply wiped his grease-stained hands with an old rag, grabbed a toolbox, and gave a small nod, signaling the Rock to lead the way to the car. Together, they walked toward the 1971 Chevelle SS, parked on the roadside. The night air had begun to cool, and the crickets had started their symphony among the bushes lining the deserted highway. When they reached the car, the mechanic lifted the hood and stood in silence for a few seconds, simply observing the engine. The Rock crossed his arms and waited, curious to see how he worked. The man ran his hand gently over the metal components, his fingers sliding as if reading a book in Braille. He touched the wires, pressed a few connections, and leaned in to listen more closely as the Rock turned the key in the ignition. After a few minutes, he sighed and scratched his chin, thoughtful. There was an issue with the fuel pump. On top of that, the electronic injection seemed unstable, which meant part of the engine would need to be taken apart to pinpoint the exact cause of the problem. The Rock, who knew this car well, understood it wouldn't be a quick fix. He was prepared to hear a complicated diagnosis. The mechanic finally looked up at him and said the repair would take at least 2 days, possibly more if other hidden issues surfaced. The actor nodded. There wasn't much else to do but accept it. The road was long, and his journey had been unexpectedly interrupted. But as he glanced around the rundown gas station and at the mysterious mechanic beside him, he had the feeling that this place held a much bigger story than it seemed at first glance. Little did he know this encounter would change both of their lives forever. The following days were unlike anything the Rock had expected. The original plan was simple: fix the car and move on. But now something was keeping him tied to that small gas station. He spent most of his time there, watching Benjamin Carter work. There was something fascinating about the way he handled each part, each gear, as if solving a puzzle only he could understand. It was a silent and meticulous job, Benjamin didn't waste a single movement. His sharp gaze examined every detail, and his hands, marked by years of hard work, moved with surgical precision. The Rock realized that this wasn't just an ordinary mechanic. There was something more, something hidden beneath that tired and resigned appearance. It was between conversations while watching him dismantle part of the Chevelle's engine that The Rock finally discovered who Benjamin Carter really was. Before working at that forgotten gas station, Benjamin Carter had been one of the greatest engineers in the automotive industry. His name had once been among the most respected, his mind responsible for advancements that changed the way high-performance engines were built. He didn't just understand mechanics, he saw beyond. To Benjamin, an engine wasn't just a collection of metal parts working in harmony. It was something alive, a masterpiece that required passion and intelligence to perfect. For years, he worked tirelessly on innovative projects. He created systems that increased engine efficiency, reducing fuel consumption without losing power. He developed new cooling methods, optimized combustion, and designed gears that made cars faster and safer. But then everything fell apart. Benjamin was betrayed. His boss at the time, an ambitious man named Victor Chambers, saw an opportunity to rise in the company by using someone else's work. He stole one of Benjamin's greatest projects and claimed it as his own. Benjamin tried to fight. He tried to prove the project was his, but Victor was faster. He manipulated documents, convinced the board that Benjamin was a liar, a fraud, created false evidence, erased files, twisted the truth. The company, which had once trusted him, didn't hesitate to discard him. He was fired, his reputation destroyed. The name that had once been synonymous with innovation became a subject of ridicule. No other company wanted to hire him. That was how one of the greatest mechanical engineers in the country ended up working at a rundown gas station, changing oil and cleaning windshields. As Benjamin told his story, The Rock remained silent. It was impossible not to feel a mix of anger and sadness. Benjamin's story hit him in a way he hadn't expected. He knew what it was like to be underestimated. He knew what it was like to be looked down upon as if his worth was less than what it truly was. For a moment, The Rock tried to imagine what would have happened if, back in the tough days of his youth, he had been prevented from continuing. If someone had cut his chances short, stolen his future. How had Benjamin moved forward after all that? The Rock looked around the workshop. It was a simple place with aged walls and a grease-stained floor. But amidst all that apparent decay, something was hidden there. He noticed an old, grease-stained notebook on the workbench. It was thick, its pages yellowed by time and worn from use. The leather cover was cracked in some places as if it had been handled countless times. Curious, The Rock picked up the notebook and started flipping through it. What he found inside left him speechless. The pages were filled with complex calculations, meticulous diagrams, and sketches of engines that looked like they belonged in a high-tech laboratory. Benjamin was still making technical notes, still designing, still creating, even without an apparent purpose. That notebook wasn't just an old journal. It was proof that Benjamin Carter had never stopped. Even after everything, after being forgotten by the world and reduced to a gas station mechanic, he was still doing what he loved. He was still designing better engines, still creating new technologies, still dreaming. The Rock closed the notebook slowly, feeling the weight of those pages. It wasn't too late for Benjamin. He looked at the mechanic and saw more than a tired man. He saw wasted talent. He saw a man who had been wronged and deserved redemption. He saw someone who needed a second chance. And he knew exactly what to do. After his car was fixed, The Rock felt that something inside him wouldn't let him simply drive away. The mechanic standing before him wasn't just an ordinary man trying to survive. There was something deeper in his story, something that resonated within The Rock in a way he couldn't ignore. Determined to uncover the truth, he picked up his phone as soon as he left the gas station and started making moves. He called old friends in the automotive industry, traced records, and cross-checked information. Gradually, the pieces began to fit together. Benjamin wasn't lying. Everything he had told was real, a brilliant past interrupted by a cruel betrayal, an injustice that threw him into the gutter with no chance of redemption. And then, among the documents and testimonies, The Rock found something even more important. Proof against Victor Chambers, the man who had ruined Benjamin's life. This wasn't just an opportunity to help someone. It was a chance to correct a wrong and deliver justice. The next morning, The Rock returned to the gas station. The familiar scent of burnt oil and rubber mixed with the strong aroma of coffee that Benjamin held in an old stained cup. The mechanic looked at him cautiously, unsure of what to expect. The exhaustion in his eyes was evident, but there was also a shadow of hope, however faint. With steady steps, The Rock approached and handed him an envelope. Inside were the proofs confirming everything Benjamin already knew, but had never been able to prove. For the first time in years, he held something solid against the man who had destroyed his career. His hands trembled slightly as he flipped through the documents, absorbing the information with a mix of disbelief and relief. But The Rock didn't stop there. He knew Benjamin needed more than just justice. He needed a new chance. With conviction, he explained that he had made some calls and had secured a job for him. A true fresh start where his talent would be recognized. Benjamin remained silent for a long time, gripping the papers tightly. His gaze shifted first to his grease-stained hands, then to the oil-streaked floor. His jaw tensed, as if an invisible battle raged within him between the desire to accept and the fear of the unknown. Years of failure and rejection had left scars. It was hard to believe that after so long, someone still saw value in him. But then, something changed. Slowly, a smile appeared on his face. Hesitant at first, but soon growing into something genuine. A different light filled his eyes. For the first time in years, he felt that maybe there was still a place for him in the world. This was the moment he had been waiting for all along. With The Rock's support and the opportunity given to him, Benjamin dove back into the world that had once been his. At first, the fear of failure still lingered in his mind, but every tool he touched, every engine he dismantled, and every project he brought to life reignited the flame that had never truly gone out. His experience and brilliance quickly caught attention. The man who had once been forgotten was now seen again, not as someone broken by the past, but as a visionary capable of transforming the future of the automotive industry. His talent for groundbreaking innovations soon made him a respected name, and before long he wasn't just a prestigious employee, he was a leader in his field. The impact of his return was felt beyond the company walls. His reputation, once stained by injustice, was fully restored. Articles began circulating about his triumphant comeback. Industry magazines highlighted his brilliant mind, and even those who had once doubted him had to acknowledge his worth. Benjamin not only proved his innocence, he proved he was irreplaceable. Meanwhile, on the other side of the story, Victor Chambers watched his empire crumble. The evidence collected by The Rock and exposed in the media was devastating. The mask of respectability Victor had worn fell apart before the world's eyes. Companies cut ties with him, investors withdrew their support, and what was once a solid empire turned to dust. Justice struck hard, and Victor, who had once destroyed careers without hesitation, now found himself alone, forgotten, just as he had done to so many others. But this story wasn't about the downfall of a corrupt man. It was about the rise of someone who should never have been torn down in the first place. Years later, Benjamin had not only resumed his career, he had taken it to an entirely new level. His innovations revolutionized the way engines were built, bringing efficiency and sustainability to the industry like never before. His name became synonymous with brilliance, and his creations changed the way people drove and viewed automobiles. And it all started because one day, The Rock looked at a man the world had forgotten and decided to extend a hand. Life can change in an instant, for better or for worse. But sometimes, all someone needs to rewrite their story is a second chance, and someone who believes in them.